Last night on this program, I showed you why I was concerned about the power that Grover Norquist has among the political elite in Washington, D.C. On these two chalkboards, I laid out some of the facts. The fact of the matter is, Grover Norquist has many connections with individuals and organizations that are tied directly to Muslim Brotherhood front groups. The Muslim Brotherhood, however crazy it may sound, has explicitly stated that they want to attack America from the inside. They're doing that with front groups like ISNA, IIIT, Muslim American Society, etc. Grover Norquist is tied to many of these organizations, and we want to enter a dialogue here without making any assumptions as to why he has been connected to these people and these groups. I don't presume to know his motive. That's what tonight is all about, giving Grover Norquist a chance to respond and give his side of the story. He joins me now from Washington, D.C. in the Blaze studios. Mr. Norquist, how are you, sir?
I'm doing well. Good to see you, Glenn.
Good to see you. Glad that you would make it to the program today. Thank you.
Oh, absolutely.
I want to just start with here. What is your understanding of the Muslim Brotherhood?
I understand from certain people that I run it or pieces of it. It's a political group that wants to politicize Islam, and anytime you politicize a religion, you cause all sorts of challenges, and it's something to be opposed. I wasn't thinking of the Muslim Brotherhood, but when we set up the Islamic Free Market Institute in the mid-90s, it was because I had seen in Afghanistan and Pakistan during the end of the war against the Soviet Union this radical strain of anti-Americanism and statism in the Muslim community from people who you would think would have been more supportive of the United States, since we were helping these people fight against the Soviet Union in Afghanistan. And so I was looking around for how do we make the case for a reformation in Islam focused on something that I know something about, which is free market economics. Mm-hmm. And I'd seen other groups within the Jewish community, the Catholic community, set up think tanks batting down liberation theology or the idea that Judaism is simply liberalism, Alan Dershowitz's argument. And I thought we needed something like that within the Muslim world. My interest was not here in the United States. It was focused out. And so the work of the Institute was trying to be a little light, a little beacon, to make the case that property rights, low taxes, just about the first thing we put out was a piece that Peter Ferrara did, great free market economist. I said, Peter, good Baptist, read the Quran. Tell me what's in it on property rights, taxes, economic liberty. Can we make the case to believing Muslims that that is fully consistent? The Acton Institute, run by Robert Sirico, he does that with the Catholic Church, and also Protestants now, but originally sort of focused on combating liberation theology in the Catholic Church. Rabbi Daniel Lapin did the same thing with Toward Tradition within the Jewish community, saying, look, Dershowitz, you're wrong. Judaism is not liberalism. It's a religion, it's written down, and it's wholly consistent with property rights, free markets, American constitutionalism. So I was looking to find out if there's if it was accurate to say, have an economist read the Quran, say property rights are there. And Peter Ferrara did a very good paper, which we disseminated widely, which says, as a Baptist, I'm reading this, and the answer is, yeah, property rights are strong, low taxes, free trade. And we did 4 conferences overseas in Doha, Qatar. And the first 2 were co-sponsored with the Heritage Foundation. Ed Fulner was our the marquee speaker. And there's a big conference. We brought a bunch of congressmen and senators over. It was organized by the Doha Chamber of Commerce University and by the Heritage Foundation and the Islamic Free Market Institute from this end. And we were able to set up various panels on, we did free trade, we did tax policy, we did property rights, we did women's women's rights, because if you have property rights but not for women, you don't have property rights.
Sure.
And democracy, which Qatar was trying to experiment with. I mean, they have an emir, it's almost a king, but at the local level they were having elections and they had women vote. So some little pieces. So we did 4 of those, 1 a year, and it was an outward-looking, talking to the Muslim world, saying, guys, your religion is not the 13th century. That's not what the Bible says or the Quran says. And what you ought to be doing is focusing on building your economy and enjoying liberty, because it is consistent. And those people who say you should be a Ba'athist socialist, like the Syrians or the Iraqis, or that you should live in the 12th or 13th century or earlier, are making it up, and that's not an accurate way to go. So we had some progress. We did it for about 4 years, and then everybody had other things
Sure.
to do, but I think it's an important project. I now work with Hernando de Soto on property rights internationally, but there's a real effort to try and get that done in Egypt and Tunisia and some of the other countries that might be more open to it now.
That sounds like an unbelievably noble goal. That sounds...
Well, it's a small effort.
Well, but I think it sounds like a noble goal.
Well, thank you.
Now, here's the question that leaps to mind. If that's my goal, gosh, how do I take a check from a guy like Moody?
Sure. Moody was a character who is in prison now for 23 years.
Yeah.
And Gordon Kromberg was the guy who prosecuted him. I knew we were going to talk, so I called and talked to Gordon Kromberg, who prosecuted him, sent him to prison for 26 years.
Sure.
He was involved in an effort to kill the king of Saudi Arabia, or somebody who was going to be king of Saudi Arabia, and was arrested, and Gordon put him in prison, 23 years. He deserves to be in prison. Killing kings or anybody else is a bad idea. The plan didn't work, but they evidently, it was a real plan. It wasn't something people were thinking about. There was a real bomb or bombs involved.
Sure.
Gordon was saying that this was real.
No, I understand it. You don't go to prison
guy.
unless you don't go to prison for 23 years unless you're a seriously bad dude.
Yes.
Yeah.
And what had happened, and it was very interesting because this guy Moody had worked with all the Jewish groups in D.C. in the 90s. You talked to all of the groups. They all worked with him. They thought he was okay. He worked with the Pentagon, for crying out loud. One conversation I had with him was when he was saying that he gave a bunch of speeches overseas. He traveled evidently for USAID or the State Department, and was telling people in Muslim countries, do you know they have freedom of religion in the United States? You can build a mosque somewhere, and everybody's eyes got really big. And I thought, that's really useful. I wish the government wasn't paying someone to do it, but it's useful. But he is somebody who was, at that point, people thought or said he was an okay guy. He had worked with Khalid Safari, who organized the Islamic Free Market Institute. I was asking around, I'm a Methodist, so I haven't read the Quran. I'm no expert here, but I did know that there were some people who had written about free market economics. Rose Wilder Lane and others had written about this in Islam. So I thought maybe there was a shot that this would work. And Moody, he and Khalid didn't get along very well. They worked in some of the same areas, but he was a little more backward-looking and not. Some immigrants haven't quite made it all the way to the United States, and they're still halfway in some previous country. He was one of those. But I didn't really have much in contact with him, but I did hear from Khalid that he was sort of okay, if oldish, school. But then in 2000, so he wrote a $10,000 check and a $10,000 loan to the Institute, I think trying to make nice with Khalid. However, he, in 2000, late 2000, October or so, gave this speech at a rally and said that he supported Hamas and he supported
hold on just a second.
Hezbollah.
Hold on just a second. At a rally sponsored by you.
Oh, okay. I know what the concern is. No. there was an intern. This was written up in Insight at the time, afterwards, because somebody had said so. We had an intern who had said that was okay. He was told that's not okay, and there was no money involved. He just, I guess, they got a bunch of people's names attached to some rally in opposition to the occupation of the West Bank.
Oh, so you didn't sponsor that at all. That was an intern that made that mistake.
Yeah, that was written up at the time in Insight magazine.
So is that a little like, because your firm was also lobbying for al-Moody, but then you said once you found out that he was going to prison, you then came out and said that that was a clerical error. So was it the same intern, or is it a different problem? No, the one was an intern. You're not supposed to sign us up for other things. Sure. He just thought he was. Happens all the time.
I don't know why he did it, but he shouldn't have. He was told not to. But just let me get back to the lobbying, because that's, I think, very important also.
Sure.
He gave this speech, and Hall had heard about it and told me, and he said, look, I told the guy, one, he needs to grovel and apologize and denounce his statement. Hall had felt he didn't do that, and he said to him, look, you haven't done anything with us. You haven't asked us for anything. You haven't gone to anything we've done. But from now on, you're not allowed to go to anything we're doing. He never went to any of the conferences or worked with anybody there, never asked for anything.
Didn't you and your number 2 guy, which was his number 2 guy, didn't you then put him on a plane to go meet Governor Bush and have his picture taken with Governor Bush?
No, that would have been before before that speech. After that, nobody would talk to him. And he went to the White House all the time under Clinton, and was visiting there and worked with everybody, and had security clearances or whatnot, but at least enough to get you into the White House. But when Bush took over, and he never went to the White House again. We checked, because somebody was claiming that we got him to the White House and stuff like that. Not true. The White House says he never went there. He certainly wasn't ever encouraged to go by me, and Hollad wouldn't have done it. Hollad was not a big fan.
Who was it that
there wasn't an interest in doing that.
I'm trying to remember who it was you set up with Dick Cheney and George Bush to meet, and then Dick Cheney said no because they found out there was a problem. I'm trying to remember which one of your friends it was. Was it al-Moody or Safuri? Do you remember? Mr. Norquist, do you remember?
I've never heard that story, sir. I'm not aware of it.
Okay, well, we'll check on it during the break, and we'll come back with that.
Sure.
Go ahead.
But you did bring up something that needs to be discussed, and that was the argument that somehow I had lobbied for al-Moody. And there's a letter that was written by Robertson, who ran the consulting company. I did some consulting for them, but specifically never did any lobbying. And 2, specifically, they didn't do anything for him. He writes, efforts to, quote, connect you to al-Moody through Janice Merritt and the Malaysian civil liberties issue is incorrect. And there's also the Washington Jewish Week did a great expose. Rabbi Lapin told me that he shared this with you about a year and a half ago. It's an award-winning investigation they did of the attacks on me by a guy named Frank Gaffney. One of them was this assertion that somehow I'd lobbied on his behalf for anything, and the answer in here that they go through is no. So it was very helpful to have that. I'm glad you brought that up, because
I just also happen to have the document. There's several of them here for your lobbying firm with his name on it. I'm just.
Yeah.
Is this just the clerical error there? Because there's also this document.
It shouldn't have been done. Evidently, it was incorrect, and we'll put up
this one
on the website now. There's a website up. I'll put up both the write-up from the Washington Jewish Week, which looked into this and wanted to, and specifically knocked it down. They did some very good
I've read that.
reporting on this.
Not really. Had to go behind a paywall, which I know you don't like, but I had to go behind a paywall to get that one, and it really wasn't exactly what you're saying it is.
Glenn, there's a website that's up now.
Yes.
I'm sorry if the title bothers you, but it's gaffneylies.com, and people can go and both see the write-up, the letter from the guy who ran the firm, and the Jewish Week publication, Washington Jewish Week. So I feel very comfortable that has been knocked down and is not true.
Okay, well, I disagree with you, but
I realize it's important to people who've tried to attack me.
Okay, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Wouldn't the website be better that Norquist tells the truth? Why do you try to personalize, isolate, and demonize? When people are...
Saul Alinsky?
Yeah. Why do you use the Saul Alinsky tactic?
The challenge is... Yeah. I've never thought that Saul Alinsky tactics work for conservatives because conservatives are vulnerable to them but can't use them. I want to write a book which is rules for conservative radicals, and the first thing you do is say, forget Saul Alinsky. It doesn't work for conservatives.
But you use it. You call people racists and conspiracy theorists. You do not?
You're talking to me now, and you can ask what my opinion is. What's happened over the last 15 years, and one thing to keep in mind is all the stuff that you discussed on your show yesterday happened at least 10 years ago. And about 10 to 15 years ago, one individual started attacking me a great deal. He felt that he wasn't getting a job that he wanted in the government. It was my fault. Previously, it was Scowcroft's fault during Bush 41.
Sure.
It's unfortunate, but that's why the focus has been on the attacks.
Well, no, this is the problem. The problem is when we're talking about personal attacks. I haven't attacked you personally. I don't know you personally. I don't know what your motivation is. Here's what I do know. Even from just what you've addressed here, if I take you at face value, you're the most unlucky person. I said if. You're the most unlucky person I've ever met in my life. I mean, only Barack Obama is this unlucky with a string of friends who are radicals.
Okay, we've gone through one gentleman. I want to go through the whole list you mentioned.
So do I. So why don't we take a break and we'll go through that whole list of apparently the most unlucky life on the planet. We'll come back in a second. I want to tell you a little bit.
I just happen to have right here. This is with me pretty much wherever I go these days. These are the Blaze bullet pens. And people are going to ask you, A, where'd you get it? B, how does it write? And why? Look, thank you.
It's not something I said.
Blaze.
Back with Grover Norquist, and I want to clean up one point here before we continue on. Can we show the picture? Last break, Grover Norquist said that Moody was not with the president, George W. Bush, after that speech. This is 3 days after the World Trade Centers came down, and you will see Grover Norquist's number 2 man, Khalid Safuri, standing next to the president here in the check tie. Just outside of this frame is Moody. He's widely reported to be at that speech, set up by Safuri, Grover Norquist's right-hand man in the Islamic Institute. So just wanted to correct that, Mr. Norquist.
Okay, 2 things. That was at a mosque. It's not something I set up, nor did Khalid. The White House put that together. And I don't believe Moody was there, but he was there. He was.
Yeah, he was there. And also, if I may,
but not because we were helping him out or something.
Well, your number 2 man was
the effort to attach me to Moody has been tried, but it's just not actually accurate.
Well, okay.
I'm glad he's in prison.
If you're comfortable with that, that's fine. Your number 2 man, Khalid Safuri, the co-founder of the Islamic Institute, was his number 2 guy. And here's where I would like to ask you. If I have a friend who suddenly I realize is a very bad man who wants to destroy America, I take out all of my friends and start looking, do they have any connections? And I certainly don't make my number 2 man the guy who was the really bad guy's number 2 man, which is what you did with Safuri.
Okay. No. Khalid ran the Islamic Free Market Institute. I was looking for someone to run it who wanted to take the approach that Islam was not tied to the 13th century, that it wasn't going to do this imposing Sharia stuff, and that it was going to be an open religion like you'd have in the United States where people can compete. And that was Khalid's position, and he was not a fan of the other guy. I think they worked in the same group, but he was in no way his deputy any more than Burr was the deputy to Jefferson. They didn't like each other.
He was he was your co-founder.
Yeah, he's the guy who ran it. I was on the board. It's his project.
Right.
I wanted to be helpful because I thought it was a good idea, and I went to each of the 4 conferences in Qatar. We had a bunch of great Republican congressmen, Buck McKeon. We did that with the embassy, with the U.S. government, and with the military.
I understand that. But
because they have a base there.
I got that.
Yeah.
But here's what I don't understand. You know that al-Moody is a bad guy. Doesn't that lead you as an intelligent man?
It became...
Yeah, as an intelligent man. I'm going to give you. You didn't have any idea. He was just a good guy, and you didn't have anything to do with him. But once you hear that speech done by the intern, you realize, wait a minute, he's a really bad guy. The guy you have as your co-founder, who was the number 2 man to al-Moody, they're joined at the hip. You don't think to call him... hold it just a second. You don't think to call
They
anyone...
didn't like each other.
Safuri and
They didn't like each other. I had been told early on that al-Moody was old school and not the kind of guy that would be part of a free market institute, and that Khalid had worked in the same organization. If you want to be an Arab American and work in an Arab American organization, there are only so many. The reason we started a new one was because we didn't want it touched by
then why would you go to the guy who is on the American Muslim Council, which is a Muslim Brotherhood front group?
Okay. Well, 2 things. Khalid's not that way, and is somebody who's worked with the U.S. government. When Bush, give you an idea of what Khalid's accomplished for the country.
I'm not talking about. I'm not talking about him. I'm talking about you. I'm not talking about him.
Right.
I'm talking about you.
The reason why I think Khalid is a good guy and fought for the right things was that he helped put into one of when we were attacking Afghanistan. There were people in the State Department who thought we're not allowed to attack Afghanistan because it was during Ramadan. And Khalid went and got the information and gave it to the Bush White House. And there's like 4 sentences in Bush's speech which says, you know, there's no prohibition in Islam for having a war during Ramadan. They've been doing it for years. And that was considered a sticking point. The Democrats were attacking Bush for that at the time. Then the second thing he did...
Let's stop. We're not talking about him. I get it. What you're saying to me is... What you're saying to me is you trusted him. Just like with al-Moody, you trusted someone else. Okay. Then let's go to... There's a pattern here that you're not really engaged, which leads me to believe that it's either incompetence or it's just you're just engaged and you don't really care. So then we got 2 people that you trusted others, and they turned out to be really bad guys. Now let's go to the third one. Sammy al-Arian.
Wait. There's nothing wrong with Khalid Safuri, sir. What was the complaint?
With Mr. Safuri, well, he is involved in a Muslim Brotherhood front group.
Okay. He worked for one of the Arab American Muslim groups. He also worked with all of the Jewish groups in the effort, the Task Force on Bosnia, which was a coalition of Muslim and Jewish groups.
You and I have a disagreement on that one. Okay, good. That's a matter of opinion. Now, the next one is Sammy al-Arian.
No, it's not. Yes.
That's fine. Sammy al-Arian. So, is this somebody else that
Absolutely.
Is this someone else that... Did you trust somebody else on this guy?
No. This is great. I'm glad you're bringing up Arian.
I am too.
There's a guy who you don't want me to talk about who runs around saying I was tight with Arian. The proof that I was tight with Arian was that he opposed the misuse of secret evidence, wanted to abolish it, and I came to believe that too. how did that come about? Well, there's a guy named James Woolsey, who was head of the CIA, and he told me that in his own case, he had taken 5 Iraqis who were working for the U.S. against the Iraqi dictator in the first Gulf War. They come back to the States. The government under Clinton wanted to deport them where they would have been murdered by the dictator. And he went to court and won that court battle. He was a tremendous leader on the whole issue. Sorry, I'm looking for...
Who are you?
It'll be up on the website.
Who's handing you... I just want to introduce... I mean, since we're all friends here, who's handing you notes during this? Who is that?
Oh, nobody is. I thought I had this here on the page. There are 2 wonderful articles. The ACLU wrote a nice piece, 2 of them, about James Woolsey. He was the one who told me that there were problems with the misuse of secret evidence. And the second reason that some person who will remain unstated says that I was like this with Arian was that he gave me an award for opposing secret evidence. Well, the award went to quite a number of people, starting with Woolsey, the former head of the CIA, because of his leadership, which he wrote. You Google Woolsey and secret evidence. He was the guy who wrote about it. He was the one who convinced me. I went to President Bush during the campaign and said, Woolsey, former head of the CIA, Democrat, but former head of the CIA, says this is a problem, and this is something that you might want to look at. And the president in the campaign said he was looking at reforming it and that this would be useful. So I'm taking advice from Woolsey, who's the former head of the CIA.
We got that.
And somebody wants to argue that this other guy, who, by the way, got charged with being a bad guy several years later, and I'm sure he probably was. But I didn't work with him. I worked with Woolsey. And
so is Woolsey a good
got
guy?
This award, along
is
with,
Woolsey a good guy? Woolsey a good guy?
I think so, yeah.
Okay, because he thinks you're a very dangerous man.
Okay. Woolsey is embarrassed that his friend attacks me, and he knows perfectly well the challenge with
our office has spoken.
that attack.
Our office has spoken to Mr. Woolsey and asked him about you. He believes you're a very dangerous man.
Okay. Well, then I'd cheerfully love to talk to him about it and ask what he thinks, what makes that make any sense. The last time we talked, it was about some challenges that he had that I was trying to help him out with. He has been the lead guy on secret evidence. I supported his position, and it moved forward. So where somebody, who shall remain nameless, was trying to tag me to that other guy who was and is a problem person, that was actually not accurate and an interesting attempt. Somebody in your show yesterday had his being in Florida with Bush and tried to attack me with it, saying that I had organized it. We heard about this because they used to blame somebody else. Suhail Khan, they said, had organized it. In point of fact, because we checked this with the administration once this came out, was they said, you know what happened? It was just a meeting that the president had with a rally, and anybody could go that wanted to, and he showed up. He got his picture taken with the president.
Wow, I lived in Florida at that time.
I
don't
organized
remember.
Or anyone else organized.
Gosh, I don't remember those
That's the one they
strawberry
talked about, the
festivals where you
strawberry
could just
festival?
go. Yeah, I used to go. I don't remember when the president just said anybody can come and get their picture taken with me, but maybe I was missing that year. We'll be back in just a second. Just a couple of things to sweep up from the last break. Here is the letter signed here by James Woolsey, distancing himself from Grover Norquist, and seeing that it was sent to one of Grover's people, there's no way that Grover doesn't know about that. Second thing is, I have an article here from the Wall Street Journal, February 21st, 2003. Mr. Norquist said that he only received an award from Sammy al-Arian. He doesn't know him. Bush had some sort of a free picture day at the Strawberry Festival, and that's how that picture was taken. But the Wall Street Journal has here, last year Mr. Arian visited the Islamic Institute's Washington offices. Those are Grover's offices, which shares offices with Mr. Norquist's Americans for Tax Reform. The Institute says the visit was brief. What were they visiting your offices? Do you recall that at all?
Yeah. Well, I remember being attacked by the person we won't mention because he claims that he dropped by. I know who he is. He was out there on TV and so on the same issue that I agreed with. I just wasn't informed by whatever he was saying. I worked with Woolsey on that and supported Woolsey's position, which was a reform that Woolsey liked. I don't know, sir. I wasn't there. Somebody claims he dropped by and left off a flyer or something. I couldn't tell you, but it's a rather thin reed to make me a co-conspirator with the guy. But it's what he who shall remain unnamed has been reduced to.
That's fine. I just, again, you are so unlucky because I don't have any terrorists that stop by my offices or I take checks from. Or could you bring up the check, please, from the 2 checks, please, from Moody? Did you pay him back, Moody? One was a loan, one was a gift. Did you pay him back?
I believe so. It was Holland organized it, but if it's a loan, then it was.
Right, okay.
It was
I forgot that you weren't really involved. But I don't have my friends who run things for me take checks from terrorists, and I don't have other terrorists come stopping by my offices to drop by literature. I mean, it doesn't happen to most people. But I'm not you,
Glenn. You know, because you've looked at this, that when Moody supported the Institute, he was in good odor with all of the Jewish groups, with the Clinton White House, the Defense Department, and the State Department. And later, when he wasn't, then he went off and went to jail like he should. And the other guy also was secretly a bad guy, not a public bad guy. I was drinking
Sammy
buddies with Jay Pollard, Jonathan Pollard, okay? It's a little bit much to blame me for his challenges later. He's in prison for life without parole. Didn't mention to me that he was a spy.
Okay. But again, that's one person, not several. Tell me about your relationship with Barzinji. He is a man that you fought side by side. You marched him into the office of the Treasury Secretary, I believe.
Barzinji is a fellow Republican, Arab American. Interestingly, I think Poole brought this up yesterday, and you put him...
Hold on just a second. Since you're going to identify him, let's also identify him as a founding member of the American Muslim Brotherhood. He's a part of ISNA, MSA, MAS, and IIIT. So he's not exactly just a great guy that you happen to meet. He's a founding member of the Muslim Brotherhood, which I heard you say earlier this morning, or earlier in the interview, was not necessarily a good thing, although you didn't distance yourself from the Muslim Brotherhood.
Okay, 2 things. At this point in time, 10 years ago, I probably didn't know what the Muslim Brotherhood was. Now it's been in the papers more because they took over Egypt for a while and tried to take over a number of other countries. Clearly, the way they've operated there, they want to set up a dictatorship, and that's completely unacceptable. But as you know, with Jamal Brzezinski, Gordon Kromberg, who prosecuted Moody and sent him to prison for 23 years, also managed the investigation, Green Quest, into a bunch of charities, including Brzezinski's. It took them 11 years to go through it. They spent $150 million, and they found that they were clean. So they went through it with a comb, with a fine-tooth comb.
Yeah, they didn't find that they were clean.
To suggest that
they didn't find that they were clean.
No indictments.
Holder administration.
No indictments. No convictions. You can indict a ham sandwich.
Holder shut it down. Okay. That's a different telling of the story. Holder shut it down.
Okay. Not. Okay.
Okay. So can I ask you on this?
If you don't think Gordon Kromberg is a good prosecutor,
that's fine.
Talk to him.
Operation Green Quest was, let's look into the sources of foreign money and money that's laundering here for terrorists in the United States. Why were you against that?
Well, they thought that I'm not against that. I'm very much in favor of that sort of thing. I don't know why you'd think I would be opposed to that. I'm certainly in favor of all of the investigations following September 11th to look into whether agents from other countries or bad guys here are doing bad things.
Okay.
What Green Quest found in looking at these was that there was no problem with them. And you can talk to Kronberg if you want, but he was on that for 11 years.
Sure.
He's no pussy. He put that other guy, Moody, in prison for 23 years. He's not cutting anybody any slack.
Okay.
You're overreaching in suggesting
I'm really
that you
not.
could smear Brzezinski.
To smear the founding member of the American Muslim Brotherhood? I don't have to reach very far to smear the founding member of the American Muslim Brotherhood. And, you know, you say that, well, 10 years ago, trying to make yourself look like somebody who was just the average American that didn't pay attention. I was the average American in 2001, and I wasn't paying attention. I quickly found out about the Muslim Brotherhood. You, sir, however, in the 90s, were trying to cobble together the Islamic people, and so it would have been completely irresponsible of you to not do your homework and not know who people like the Muslim Brotherhood were. But you claim ignorance until you sound a little like President Obama. I just found out about the Muslim Brotherhood while watching the news.
Look, the goal, I walked through this. The reason we set up the Islamic Free Market Institute was
we don't have much time, so we know that.
We didn't want to work with any other group. We wanted something that was standalone. We also had Core Tradition, which is a Jewish outreach group, in our offices as well.
You brought the people in that are part of the Muslim Brotherhood.
Into what? He didn't come to our conferences. He didn't work with us on... The idea they used to claim that we brought people into the White House or this
You're marching the founding member of the Muslim Brotherhood into the Treasury Secretary's office. Are you telling me, A, you didn't know that that's who he was, or B, you just didn't care that's who he was? Or maybe you were trusting somebody else to do the homework for you.
Okay. People set up meetings. You have to go through security. If there's something wrong with somebody, that's what the Secret Service and so on
trusted. Okay, so now you're trusting somebody else.
I trusted the U.S. government. Yes. Sorry. Sue me.
Okay. Good. I would think with the record of the bad guys around you,
and a very good attorney.
I would think with the bad guys around you, you should probably, at best, take a little more personal responsibility for the people you surround yourself with. Back in a minute. I just want to clear up a couple of things here from the last break. First of all, I was correct on Holder shutting the investigation down. The man who Mr. Norquist was touting, Kronberg, did have a draft of an indictment of 116 counts of money laundering and tax fraud. It was Eric Holder who shut that down. Also, he made the statement that Mr. Kronberg isn't a wussy, and he, in fact, is the man who just got the sentence for Moody reduced from 23 years to 16 years. So I just thought I'd throw those two in. Let's go to Suhail Khan, sir. Good friend of yours?
Sure.
Okay.
Suhail Khan is from California, worked for a Republican congressman out there.
Yep.
I know that he who shall not be mentioned claims that I got him his job at the White House. In point of fact, he was longtime friends with the woman who ran that office, the Outlook office, or the Public Affairs office. I think he did a great job. And if you think he's a bad guy, he organized, along with Marshall Brieger, who was Reagan's outreach person to the Jewish community, two of the most important trips in recent history. And one of them was of American Muslims and rabbis to Auschwitz. And they put out a statement condemning any effort to deny or minimize or belittle the Holocaust.
So
those were American Muslim
I think that's fantastic.
imams.
So he's a
internationally, a couple years later.
Yeah. So he's a friend of yours.
So I think that was very helpful.
Right. I think so too. So he's a friend of yours.
It's unprecedented.
He's a friend of yours.
I like him.
Yeah. Close friend.
He works for Microsoft.
Yeah. Close friend.
Yeah. His friend is people have in politics. Look, I have 150 people come to my office every Wednesday for the Wednesday meeting. I got lots of friends.
Okay. I'm just asking you if you're friends.
Sure.
Real friends?
Yeah. Yeah. He's a friend.
Good.
I like him.
So are you the kind of guy that sits around and, drinks whatever you drink or, whatever, and you've had a chance to chat with him? Just casually chat with him?
Yes. He
good.
works at Microsoft. He used to work for the White House.
Okay, good. So
yeah.
Here's what I'm wondering. You, with a guy who has had such an unbelievable life, almost a movie life of bad luck, of having bad people around you. Here you have Suhail Khan.
Except you haven't made that case, sir. We've walked through this, and those assertions are made. And again,
okay.
If you want to come and look at gaffneylies.com, you can see the write-ups, which I think will handle these things.
That's good.
And we'll keep it updated for you.
That's good. So Suhail Khan, have you ever said to him, so Suhail, your folks were pretty intense. I mean, your folks were Muslim Brotherhood. Your folks, just before the World Trade Center bombing, had the blind sheik over to the house. What was that like?
Okay. His dad's been dead for 15 years, 20 years or something. So I've never discussed his dead father with him. I've heard the accusation. It was also recalled by Investors Business Daily with an apology and a correction. So I'm assuming that they wouldn't have done that if they weren't concerned about what it was that
you're good friends with him. You're good friends with him, and you never said to him in just a casual moment, "Hey, this thing with the blind sheik, what was that like? And how did you get away from parents that were Muslim Brotherhood and now become such American patriots, and you're doing all these things with Jewish..." Did that ever bother your mom, who's still alive, I presume? Did that ever bother your mom? Do you think that would have bothered your dad? I mean, they had the blind sheik over.
Okay. I haven't had a conversation with him about his father, who had passed away 10 years before I ever met Suhail. And I judge a man by the content of his character, not his parents. I don't know that anything you said about his parents is true, by the way. That said, people should be judged on their own character. He did a very good job in knocking down this Holocaust denial that we see from those idiots in Iran and slapping it down hard and putting together the international group that he and Brieger and Rabbi Jack put together is, I mean, the biggest imam, I'm told, in Indonesia and Turkey and a number of other places, and they all put out statements against anti-Semitism. That, I think, was an extremely helpful project, and I think it should be commended. And he's certainly a loyal, serious Republican, Reagan Republican.
Well, I certainly appreciate your time, Mr. Norquist. I think you've opened a lot of people's eyes one way or another, and I wish you the best, and thank you for being part of the program. Back in a minute. Tough to sift through at this point in our country's history, and it's your job to sift through it. Who do you believe? Who do you trust? And how important is it to get to the bottom of the truth? Lord, we would ask that you would help us. We would ask that the innocent shall be righteously upheld, and that the bad guys don't win, and that we are able to see the truth and light and oppose it directly to lies and darkness. We would ask that we would do no harm in our search for truth. And we ask these things in your holy, holy name. Amen. From Dallas, good night, America.